Hi guys, back again. How have you been going? Did you look at the inner child work? Have you been practicing that? What did you think about the last video I did, which was about, feelings aren't facts, but they are your reality? And I think I wanted to extend on that a little bit because I think a lot of people don't know their own reality, and I think there's a good reason for that. When we are being brought up on the planet by those godlike figures in our lives, which is our parents, we are often taught what our reality is. And that's just part of the socialization process. So I'm not blaming parents, but really part of that socializing people on the planet is to teach them, what things are, how to navigate the world, how to be a human being on planet Earth here. Now that's not easy. Having had 3 kids of my own, I know it's not easy, especially if you are wounded or you're not. And how many of us are completely well? None of us. We're all on a spectrum. And so how do we know our own reality? How do we wake up from, the conditioning we've had and what we've been taught our whole lives? And of course, that isn't easy because we develop this persona, this identity, and that's part of this ecosystem, and that's part of how we survive here on the planet. But if you were brought up in an environment where, it wasn't safe at home, then we're very good at adapting, children, and so we adapt. And you just realise what some kids go through, but they somehow survive. And so we're great little survivors. And we can create things in our mind to help us navigate what we're going through. A lot of the time when we're kids, especially when we're before 7, we're just emotional. So we're not really storing it up in our memory banks, but we are storing it in our body banks. So, we have, there's the body holds the score. It's like the body remembers. And this is why sometimes you won't know rationally, logically, things that happen to you between those ages. And often not, you won't remember the first 7 years, which is kind of normal. Unless something huge happens or very vivid, like you have a very vivid memory of something that stays with you. But most of us don't have a lot of memory, and that's because you're not laying down memories at that age. You're laying down sensations and feelings in the body. That's what we're feeling beings, and then we become more cognitive once we get to sort of 6, 7, 8, that kind of age. So if you've been told what your reality is, it's you've been told that this is how it is, and we don't often know our own reality. So when I'm working with an individual or a couple, I use the table analogy, and the analogy is, to have a stable relationship, stable table, you need 4 legs. To have a stable relationship, you also need 4 legs. And the 4 legs of this as an individual or as a couple, I'll often use this when I'm working with couples. So the 4 legs are commitment to self. And so we discuss, what does commitment mean to you? What does commitment look like? A lot of people get very confused, or they have their own idea of what that word means. So for a lot of people, it's like, when I commit something, it means I'm going to do it for a long time. So if I commit a relationship, I'm going to love you forever and I'm going to stay with you forever. And a lot of people think that's what commitment means. For me, I'll take that off the table. Commitment, I'm talking about, can I be committed to me in this very moment? Can I come through for me right now? And what I mean by that is, can I allow myself to feel whatever I feel, and just allow it? Doesn't mean you have to like it or want it. And this is a lot of people, what have you been taught? Young, repress, deny and avoid. So a lot of us aren't really committed to self. The second leg on the table is honesty. And I always ask people, what do you think I mean by honesty? And a lot of people think, oh, well, I'll tell you what I think. So if someone says, does my bum look big in this? If I'm honest, I'll say, yeah, it does. That kind of honesty, I'll tell you what I think. For me, I'm not talking about that kind of honesty. I think we all have an opinion, that's not what honesty is about. Real honesty is about, can I tell you how I feel in my heart? Now, think about the first 7, 10 years of your life? Were you able to just express yourself emotionally in a safe environment? Now, maybe you were, which is fantastic. You probably learnt to manage your emotions. But most of us were, at least if you're over 20, were brought up in a generation of you'd be seen and not heard as a child. So you weren't really taking a lot of notice of, you were told what to think and feel mainly. And if you did have a feeling, you got it beaten out of you or shamed out of you, or don't do that, don't feel that way. And I've talked about this in lots of other videos, just one example. Oh, mummy, I'm scared. Don't be silly. So there's nothing under your bed, there's nothing to be scared of. And so, of course, if you tell a kid that their feelings are silly, then they're going to feel silly for having them. And eventually that's going to kind of be, okay, I'm not supposed to have them, shame, because this is how we survive, and mummy doesn't like it, or daddy doesn't like it if I have scary feelings. So I learn to repress, deny, and avoid. And so you can see commitment to self isn't something we often do, because we're more committed to everybody else and pleasing them. Honesty, well, yeah, I can't really be honest about how I feel, because I haven't been taught to be honest how I feel. In fact, I've been taught the opposite, repress, deny, and avoid. And the second one is love and kindness. Is that loving and kind if you're not really listening to your own heart, if you're rejecting how you feel, if you're not coming through for yourself in that moment? I mean, if I didn't come through for you in this moment, would that be loving and kind? No. If mum and dad doesn't come through for you in that moment, would that be loving and kind? You see, you have to have these legs on the table. And the last one is trust. Because how can you trust yourself if you don't really know how you feel? How can you trust another? And this is why the table works for individuals, but also for relationships. So think about the relationship. If you're with someone and they're, not happy, and you reject what they're saying, you won't listen to it because they're trying to express that maybe they feel a bit, I don't know, unheard, unlistened to, unloved, I don't know what it is. And you're like, reject, defend, then, where's the commitment in that moment to each other? Where is the, allowing someone to be really honest about how you feel? Where is the trust? Where's the loving kindness? And so, do we actually know our own reality? I don't think a lot of us do most of the time. We're just running on programs that were developed in the first 7 years. And that's why I say, if you don't, reprogram yourself, then you will keep running on those programs. So, and a lot of us who were programmed in early to not feel and to not really have the freedom to think what we thought, because we'd have been told off, or don't think that way, or don't feel that way. And it's subtly, no one actually says don't feel that way and don't think that way. They it will come out like like I said to my daughter in the last video, when she said, I haven't got any friends, I said, don't be silly, of course you have. So there was me telling her that her thoughts and feelings about her having no friends, no, that's silly, right? So I'm telling her she's silly, So how do you feel when someone says, oh, you're being silly, you're being stupid, you're being an idiot? But that's what I think, and that's how I feel. And because I didn't like what I heard, I wanted her to repress, deny, and avoid it. No, you don't think that way. I'm going to tell you your reality. Now, that was one thing I remember, saying and doing. And I'm sure I did a zillion other things, don't get me wrong. I mean, yes, I failed miserably. I did my best and I failed miserably. And that's what I think as a parent we have to realise. Because I was brought up by seen and in that seen and not heard generation. And I took over some of that until I woke up and learned how to do it differently. And I started to understand myself and, what happens when we are brought into the world and how we are conditioned. So do you even know your own reality? I work with a lot of people who are very au fait with how someone else might feel. because that was how they learnt to survive. So if you're brought up in an environment where perhaps mum and dad are quite volatile, maybe one or the other is an alcoholic, or is absent, or addicted or something, then you can often as a child be quite hypervigilant to the energy in the room, and so immediately if dad's or mum's had a drink, and you go into defense mode and coping mode and trying to control mode. And the thing is, when you kind of get brought up in those first 7 years, so that's when you're being brainwashed, conditioned, groomed, as I like to say, to be a certain way. And so, do you even know your own reality? Because a lot of people know everyone else. Oh, well, I know what they need. I know what they want. I can pick up on that. That's why with those, that we've got heightened awareness, because that was a survival stance, because we had to be aware so we could protect ourselves. And that's the problem with a lot of people not knowing their own reality. And this is why I want to say that your feelings are your truth. They might not make sense, and they might not be logical or rational, but they are your truth, and they're your responsibility, and you have to come through for them, be committed to them, learn to be okay even if you don't like it, you don't want it. Of course you don't like it, and none of us like to feel those negative feelings. And so what is your reality? How do you feel in any given moment? And this isn't about you being just wholly self-absorbed and thinking about yourself all the time. This is about you knowing thyself. That great adage, know thyself. That is the only life that's worth living. Because if I don't know how I really feel about anything, how can I make concerted choices about anything? How can I ever really choose? And if you're with someone that doesn't know their own reality, you're not going to have a healthy relationship. Two unhealthy people come together. You're unhappy, I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy, you're unhappy. That's you find other unhealthy people. You're like a lock and a key. I need to be needed, and I need someone to need me. Like that kind of scenario. So I need you to need me, and I need somebody. And so you find people, and they become codependent. That's how me and my husband were in the beginning. Until we woke up and realised, oh, this isn't working. And this separation, which is very painful, so you can come together as two whole, healthy, doing life together, side by side. If you're like this, are any of your choices ever really about you and what you want? And do you even know what you want? Do you even know what you like? What's important to you? What are your value systems? A lot of people are completely ignorant of all of that. And I get it, I was too. Because I've been brought up in an environment where I wasn't told, but I was shown by watching my parents how relationships are, what I need to be as a woman, as a wife. What did your parents teach you? About, what does your mum teach you about what it was to be a woman? What did your dad teach you about what it is to be a man? What did you see growing up? What did you take on board and think, well, that's just how it is? Women do all the housework and men do all the gardening. What did you see? What did you experience? If you saw mum and dad fighting a lot and one always acquiescing to the other, how did that impact on you? If you saw, especially, sometimes the ethnic cultures can be very, women are second-class citizens, so they do all the menial tasks. And maybe the man goes out to work and earns the money, and then kind of they expect to be waited on. Now, I think that was very popular back in my day. I think that's what a lot of women did. They stayed at home and they waited on the family. They did everything in the house, cooked, cleaned. I mean, their job never ended, and the husband, it's like, I want my dinner at 6:00 and it better be on the table. Now, we have changed, thankfully. We've got much more egalitarian relationships. But even so, if you've been brought up in that environment, and that wasn't that long ago. So what did you see? Now, maybe you saw the opposite. Maybe you saw your mum wore the pants in that house, and your mum went to work and your dad stayed home. So what did you see? What do you think the roles are of men and women? How did they have their relationship? Was it always fraught? Was it loving and kind? Was it honest? Or, like, what did you see? Because that, in a way, is what is going to inform you and condition you and program you. And yeah. So this is interesting stuff because, there's a lot going on in the planet. We're all kind of waking up, and I don't know if you're watching the news or watching the independent news about what's happening over in America and different countries, that all these things are now becoming apparent about actually the people that have been running the show for years. And we are realising, look what's happened in Hollywood, things aren't what they seem. These lovely, nice people that we admired and look up to are not actually what they seem. They're actually got some very big dark spots in their lives, and they've done some pretty horrific things. And so we're starting to see this reality in front of us start to reveal itself to us. And I think that is happening microly within us as individuals and also outside in the world. And so what's that feeling like? What's that looking like? How are you going with that? Do you know your own reality? So when I say that, it's like what's happening inside here, but do you have control over your thoughts? Are your thoughts controlling you? Do you just let in any thought that comes in? And now this is the difference between a heady and hearty, which is what we talked about in the last one. You more cognitive and much more in your head, or you're more in your body, perhaps more emotional. And we've all got things to work on. For me, I had to learn to control this. I had to learn to not allow some things to come in. I wasn't in control of this. I am now. And I tell you what, life's a lot different. I learned how to manage my emotional spaces. Now, saying that, if you can control this, sometimes you don't get a lot of those emotions. So, because if I'm not always thinking constantly negative things, then obviously that's going to impact on how I feel. And so, do you know your own reality? Do you know how you feel in any given moment? Are you aware that your mind is telling you things all the time? Have you got an awareness of what your mind is saying? Are you aware of that? Or completely oblivious of that? You just, because you think it must be true. And so this is all kind of, leading on one from the other. And this is perhaps a deeper understanding of learning about yourself, so you can know thyself, know what, like I've been watching a lot of, let me use me as an example, I've been watching a lot of the news, the independent news, and I realise I'm a big one on justice. If I see injustice, it kind of upsets me. And of course, a lot of what I'm seeing happening over there is so unjust. It's just not fair. It's causing me a lot of, like uncomfortable feelings. And so I realise if I watch it too much, then it kind of leaves me feeling, helpless, overwhelmed, pissed off, angry. And I kind of don't really want to feel like that. So I have to limit the amount of time I watch it and be very careful about what I'm watching, because I want to I want to see what's going on, but I don't want to get all caught up in it and buy into it that it's leaving me miserable, upset, unhappy, frustrated, helpless, hopeless, overwhelmed. That's not going to work for me. So I have to measure. So I know that if I spend time too much on the internet, that's not going to work for me either. I feel a bit drained. I feel a bit, blah. It doesn't work for me. If I spend too much time eating too much, drinking too, whatever it is, I know myself well enough to know that, and then I can make better choices over where I put my focus, over where I put my time, things that I eat. Some things agree with me, some things don't. If I eat too much bread, I feel like crap. If I don't drink enough water, I feel dehydrated. And so I am beginning to know thyself. And compared to what I was 5, 10, 15 years ago, I know myself even better. And that's an ongoing journey. And only then, when you really know yourself, you know your own reality, how you really feel, and you're not being bombarded by other people telling you what you should think and feel, you get some clarity about, okay, well, now I can make conscious choices and decisions about what I want, what I want to do, where I want to spend my time, what I want to focus on, who I want to spend time with. It's the same can be said of, people that drain you. Now, some people, are wonderful to be with and they give you energy and they make you feel good and light and excited about life. Some people, not so much. Who are those people? And if you're spending a lot of time with those people that are draining you and, making you feel less than or disempowered, then what's behind that? Why would you do that to yourself? Do you feel like you should? You're obliged to? Maybe they're family members and so you feel like there's an obligation. But is that really you taking care of you? If you're constantly putting yourself in front of people, places, things, substances, sugar even. I know I don't eat a lot of sugar. I'm not a lover of sugar. I'm probably more of a savoury person, so it's not such a big deal. But I know when I do go out and if I eat a bit of sugar, the next day I feel really weird and crap. Like my head's weird and I feel this back of my mouth, back of my throat, there's a weird feeling. So why would I do that to myself? And I know we're always, realising more and more that I have to take responsibility. It's my responsibility about what I put in my mouth, what I sit in front of, who I spend time with, what I focus on. All of those things is my responsibility. And I do want to put in here because I'm fascinated about why all of a sudden we're all so offended by everything. And I have a theory around that. Because a lot of people, it's like, all this gender stuff, all the LGBTQI thing, it's like we're all so offended. It's like you can't say anything to anyone because we're all so deeply offended. Now, I think there's a reason for that because back in the day, we were very stoic because we had learnt to repress, deny and avoid our emotions. But as time's gone on and we're more allowing of those emotions, it's like we're starting to feel our feelings more and we're realising actually, I feel hurt, I feel bad. And instead of owning them and saying, well, that's my feeling, my responsibility, I'm going to point the finger at you and blame you and you're a bad person and you're mean and you're evil and this is what we do. We play the victim and we point fingers instead of going, well, one finger forward, three back, come back to me. It's my emotion, my responsibility. And so if I'm offended, and let me share something. When I first became a Samaritan, years ago, 30 years ago, they said to us, what do you think would upset you the most if someone spoke to you on the phone? And I was like, oh no. I said, well, if someone started swearing at me and swearing, I think that was the word, it was like swearing, I wouldn't like that. And I realised as soon as someone swore, I'd feel deeply offended. Because what was I taught growing up? Bad people swear. Don't you dare swear. You'll get into big trouble if you swear. My parents never swore. And I love that. They weren't the kind of people that swore. But actually, I grew up thinking it was a very bad and wrong thing to do. And if people swore, they were bad and wrong. So I made them bad. But it's my feeling, my responsibility. So that doesn't mean, even as an adult, I'm so not offended. If someone wants to swear, I swear. I'm so not offended anymore. I'm not that person anymore. I don't judge them and think, they're wrong and bad anymore. I realise what we're taught growing up really impacts us and what we believe in our value system. I told you the thing about the little boy, this kid dropping rubbish on the floor, and I was probably told off quite severely if I ever did that. That's wrong and bad. And then, of course, I judged another doing the same thing. And yeah, all right, it's probably not the best thing to do, probably best to pick your rubbish up. But for me to feel deeply offended and then stay offended because someone that I didn't know, was never going to know, had dropped a little bit of rubbish on the floor. And this is what we're all experiencing, aren't we? We get in our cars and we're so deeply offended that someone cut us up. We personalise it and we make it about us. We become victims and play blame games. They're a terrible human being. They cut me up. And it's just interesting, isn't it? We're so easily offended. Are you easily offended? Does someone, I was, because I was deeply insecure when I was a young person. So I told you, someone just had to look at me the wrong way and I'd be like, I'd personalise everything. But that comes from a victim mentality. Now, don't get me wrong. We should not put up with bad behaviour. If someone wants to, shout and yell at me, no, I'm not putting up with that. I'm not putting up with that. If someone did that to me, but if someone's over there shouting and swearing and I'm offended, what can I do about that? I mean, it's just insanity, really, if you think about it, because if you're like that, you could be offended by every single little thing. I don't want to live my life where you go out the door and there's the possibility of me being offended by someone over there doing something that they obviously want to do, that I've been taught is bad and wrong, and now I feel justified and righteous in my, and there's some things, don't get me wrong, that I do not like. And of course there's things I don't like. We went away recently and a lot of young women on the beach were walking around with bathers on that showed their arse cheeks off. And I was like, seriously? I really don't want to see that. And I think I felt embarrassed for them because there's children around and they're seeing these women with their bottoms hanging out. And I felt like, that just felt like, what? Where's that person's dignity? Now, you do whatever you want in the privacy of your own home, in your own garden. You go naked. What you do in your own time, in your own space is entirely up to you. But when you get women walking around, and it doesn't matter how big or small or how good or bad they looked, it wasn't about that. I do not want to sit and eat my lunch while I'm looking at someone's arse cheeks. I don't necessarily want to be down the beach watching all these people walking around with their arse cheeks hanging out. Now, you can call me a prude. I don't care. I don't care what you think about that. I'm just aware that I realise as women, where's our dignity gone? We're all hanging out all over the place. And it's just, I feel like that, that story that we all got told as kids about the emperor who had no clothes on. Like he's walking around naked and someone convinced him he looked good in these clothes. And we all went, oh yeah, they look great. I feel like that. I feel like, am I alone here? Is it just me? Or I feel like women are being encouraged to literally go around half naked and we're all supposed to be okay with that. Now, one time, if you walked around with it all hanging out, you'd actually be, done for indecent exposure. And I feel like we've gone the other way. Yeah, right, we perhaps felt like we couldn't show an ankle back in the day, but now it's like we're all letting it hang out, and that's okay too. Personally, I feel like, and I don't feel personally offended, I just don't want to see it. I just don't want to see bottoms hanging out. And I feel like it's a bit weird to think there's kids around looking at these women and walk around with their bottoms hanging out. Oh dear, is it just me? Anyway, we probably need to stop there. Let me know what you think. Am I just saying what everyone else is thinking, but they don't want to say because they don't want to feel like they're offending anyone? Have we gone into a space where we can't say anything in case we offend someone? Yeah, I think we've gone too far left. Too far right isn't okay. Too far left isn't okay. Come on, let's come into the middle ground here. Let's have some kind of dignity, sensibility. Some of the stuff that's happening, it's not okay. It's never going to be okay. And you can tell us till you're blue in the face that we have to be okay with this. Mandated injections, that's not okay. That's not freedom. There's no choice in that. And I think we all need to wake up and realise how we are being manipulated and, and how we're not free, by telling us we have to stay in and wear masks and get injections. There's no freedom in that. We've come so far the other way, it's untrue. Anyway, just wanted to share that with you. I'm not sure what you think, but feel free to share, like, subscribe. If there's anything you really want me to talk about more, please feel free. Until next time, bye for now.